It's in the meeting packet.
Seems like, oh, we're live? Okay, well, good evening and welcome to the Wednesday, November 29th, 2023 meeting of the Elementary School Building Committee. I will go through the agenda and then we will go ahead and get started. We'll have our public comment portion. We still have the standing agenda item is updates on public engagement, which we don't have a lot to talk about here, but then we will approve some minutes, some invoices. We will discuss the funding vote process and results. We will discuss the project schedule and next steps. We will vote on amendments to the contracts for the OPM and designer for design through project closeout. And then we will adjourn. So public comment, we have our usual audience here for public comment, so we will reserve the right to open that back up if anybody does attend. I'm going to go ahead and take out of order the agenda and just open with discussing the project funding vote and results. Obviously, as everyone here, and I assume everyone watching knows, the project received a favorable vote from both town meeting and last night at the town ballot, which means that we are now ready to go ahead with the next steps on the project, which is extremely exciting for, I know, all of us who have spent the last few years working around this project. And so just wanted to congratulate everyone around this table and the committee members who are not here. It was a ton of work getting both to town meeting and to the town ballot. And I think what we saw from the voters was the work we did, the extensive analysis, the constant communication, the different methods of public engagement, the ability to answer any question from any resident at any time in any medium, really made the town feel like this committee had done the work of vetting solutions and gave them their support. I heard many people, both directly and indirectly, who attended town meeting, who said that they actually came in unsure how they were going to vote, and that it was actually the presentation and the analysis and answers to questions that swayed them to vote yes. And I think for those of us who have been to a number of town meetings, the idea that people are coming in and still able to be swayed on anything is a little unusual. So I think that speaks to the job that we all did. So hope everybody got a chance to take a little bit of a breath between last night and tonight. And now, to quote Mike, now we get to start the fun part.
This is the fun part.
So I don't know if anybody else has any comments or thoughts on the funding vote. I know we'll talk about next steps a little bit later in the agenda.
No, I just want to add like a genuine thank you to you, John. I think you have been such an awesome leader and communicator, and to you as well, Bill, for your work. You guys did an amazing presentation at the actual town meeting, but John, you in particular have been all over town presenting at 7 a.m., 7 p.m., and maybe via FaceTime and Zoom and all the things from different countries, and you've just gone above and beyond to ensure that the community is involved and knew the right thing to do. So thank you for your work.
Thank you. Okay, so let's move on to meeting minutes. And do we have meeting minutes?
No.
Probably not.
Okay, I was surprised to see them in the agenda, and then I opened the packet and they weren't there. We do, however, have bills to pay.
We do.
Yes.
So that I will come back to. And our invoice package, which was linked in the meeting agenda, which is awesome. So we have a total of 6 invoices to pay. We've got an invoice number OPM 116-19 to Vertex Project Management in the amount of $10,389.25. We've got two invoices, 178 and 210 for Miaras and Harrington for legal services for $90 and for $1,575. We've got invoice number 23-489 to Lucas Environmental LLC for $2,227.50. We've got invoice number D101123 to Faith Community Church for a facility rental for $300. We've got invoice number 693-915-9337 payable to me, which for full disclosure is for things that printing of the, what are they called, flyers that we handed out in and around the town meeting. So for $557.81. The total is $15,139.56. So I would seek a motion to approve the invoice packet in the amount of $15,139.56.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mike, second by Jag Root. We have nobody remote tonight, so all those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Nope. So it passes unanimously 5-0. And now we move on to, we talked about the funding vote process and results. And so now we can talk about the project schedule and next steps. Actually, I have one more question on funding. I realize I have a question. For funding vote process and results, is there any, do we have to send any communication to the MSBA?
Yes.
Okay.
So we
Is
can
that
handle that on
something-
behalf, so we need to send a certified copy of both the town meeting vote and a certified copy of the ballot once
Okay.
it's available.
Okay, so we just need to reach out to Connor to get those. I'm sure the ballot won't be available for a bit
Right, that
at
one
this
takes a little
point,
bit,
so,
but we can get the
yeah.
first one. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Then do we want to talk schedule and next steps?
Yep. So included in your packet was a timeline. Chris is going to plug in just for those who didn't bring a computer. It's the same one you've seen that we presented around to the various groups in town and at town meeting as well. Kind of where we are in the overall process. So we wrapped up schematic design, you got your successful vote. So we're on to design development. So the next steps ahead of us are, if you recall, schematic design is roughly 30% of the overall design. So design development will get us to about 50% of the way there. And so that's our next major milestone that'll take us to the spring. And so the design team will work diligently from now, month of December through March, and then we'll issue a pricing set. And then we'll get updated numbers on that and bring that back to the committee for a cost check. We'll do 2 independent estimates as we've done before. If we're over or under the budget, we'll talk to you about scope adds or reductions or alternates that we may need to track. And then we'll continue on. Obviously, market conditions change and are one of the underlying things. And then scope develops through conversations with this committee. Once we're into design development, the next major milestone is the permitting process, and so we'll be submitting that this spring. If you recall, there's both a local permitting process with Planning Board and Concom, but there's also a state process with MEPA. And that's the longest process, so we want to get that one going as quickly as possible because that will be the definitive factor of when we can start construction. The local stuff, we know exactly how long that takes. Once the state gets involved, many departments have their hands in the review, and that can get bogged down in the process. So we included in the overall schedule a generous duration for design and permitting. There's a possibility that this can all be reduced. And so, kind of halfway through design, we'll take a breath, Dan and I, and look at kind of where we are in the road ahead and decide whether to accelerate some of the design or whether to stay on track what we are and then lead to the bid docs. Right now, we put a generous construction duration of 28 months that we talked about as a group because that's the more conservative number, responding to both MEPA and the fact that we're a general contractor delivery. There's a possibility this could be delivered in 2 years versus 28 months, but until we know time of year that we can break ground, that will be determined at a later date, and then we'll dial in before we actually bid the job what we're telling the contractor they have to deliver it by. So we'll dictate to the contractor when the building has to be opened based on the facts on the ground at that particular time. One of the other things that we're going to consider and look at down the road at the end of design development is whether to break off the Hayden Row improvements as a separate bid package. So that's an alternative option that would potentially allow the building to be built faster because you're actually building the roadway widening ahead of time to allow us to get the construction vehicles directly into the driveway and have less impact on Marathon and also provide more relief to Marathon sooner by having that pocket lane extended. So there's value in that. There's obviously cost pluses and minuses of having a separate contractor. And when the time comes, we'll talk to you guys about that in length. And so those are the major schedule discussion points that we'll have over the course of the project. But as of now, we're assuming that we would open the school in January of 2028. But there, like I said, depending on those options I just outlined, we may be able to open in September of 2027. Any questions on schedule? Okay. So I also included, just for your digestion, the more detailed schedule in the meeting packet. So instead of this simplistic timeline, it has the details of when we're issuing the various packages, when we're getting contractor on board in terms of pre-qualification processes, as well as the permitting steps. And Dan and I will fill out the MIPA with greater detail once we've filed that and have all the departments that are going to review it listed on the schedule. Right, so with that, that brings us to the next steps, which is for the building committee to review the contract proposals for both Perkins and Vertex, and if satisfied, authorize us to proceed this evening. So the two proposals that are in front of you are the same proposals that were presented in August. Vertex has not changed in any great detail. We had presented the same proposal dated August 18th and have recaptured that and put a contract amendment on it. Included in the packet is the MSBA's. The MSBA, when they issue the original contract, there's two options. If you go design, bid, build, there's a certain set of requirements, and if you go CM at risk, there's a set of requirements. So in the backup of that, it inserts the correct articles that now are being inserted into the contract. But that's the same for both Perkins and Vertex. Perkins's proposal, we didn't give you in detail back in August. Dan was on vacation at the time we wrapped up the submission in August. We did have the numbers in the budget, and so the numbers that are in, the overall total numbers that are in the budget 3011 match Dan's numbers. His distribution changes a little bit, so I will have to augment that with the MSBA, just how we juggle the dollars. I put a little more up front. We've kind of pulled some of that to the middle and to the back. But overall, he stayed within the number, and we were able to squeeze a little more scope into Dan's budget. He smiles.
Particularly from Dan.
There are things that are not in Dan's number right now that are numbers within the overall total project budget, and that's some of the construction administration as it relates to the geotechnical engineer, the geothermal engineer. So we have the design to get you to bidding, but we don't have the actual construction administration because we haven't determined the overall schedule. So we'll determine those two at a later date.
But they are budgeted for.
They're budgeted for. Our contract is very straightforward. It's clean. It'll be a lump sum on a monthly basis that will elevate as we get deeper into the project. I'll be bringing additional staff on to supplement Chris and myself. And you'll see new faces through the middle to later part of design, and then additional faces when we get to the construction phase of the project. Dan has included most of what's in there were needed for permitting, certainly the local permitting. Obviously, if we get in a long back and forth with extra meetings that were unanticipated, Dan may come back for requests for some additional meeting coverage. The MIPA, he put some qualifiers in there because we can't control all the various boards that the state has. So he thinks he's covered it. We included the first submission, which is the ENF, and a partial submission for the EIR. But obviously, if the EIR gets a lot more complex, then Dan will be coming back to us for some additional services to reflect the additional scope.
All of which is incorporated in the project budget, if not in this contract.
Yeah, we have outside of the number there's another 100,000 set aside for architectural additional services.
Yeah.
And then we have our reserve contingency for all items that come up along the way.
Yeah. One of the other ones that's kind of a bit of a wild card is the environmental justice community. There is an environmental justice community in Ashland, which is within the radius of the site, which means we're going to have to reach out to them and have some kind of public meetings with them. And I don't know we have no idea how that's going to go down or how that process is going to pan out.
It's a newer requirement
new
that we
requirement.
have not gone through yet, but that gets pulled in because of the MIPA process.
So is this a local citizen group or is it a government agency?
What I understand happened is there's this environmental justice push and the state kind of dropped it on that organization and said, you figure this out.
Okay.
And then their figuring it out was saying, well, okay, we'll just make this a requirement. But I think there's a lot of, it's an open net. There's a lot of different places where you can kind of fall through. And one of them is this one where it's an environmental justice community, but it happens not to be in your community. So it's and we're doing a school, which they're going to wonder why we are even sending them any letter at all about this and why we would want to have a public meeting in their town about it. Because your building's going to have really no impact on them.
Right.
But it's one of these requirements that I think is not really fine-tuned at that level for how they're going to handle it, and it's still kind of in its infancy. It's not that old. It's only about, I think, a year to a year and a half it's been in play. So it's, I think as time goes on, you may find that there'll be new requirements that say, well, if it's not your town, don't worry about it. But right now, it is.
It's a radius thing, so,
Yeah,
you know,
it's just a-
it's a policy that's blanketly put across the state, and you drop it into these little, and it's subsects of the town. It's not the whole town of Ashland, but this pocket, based on socioeconomic factors, is considered an environmental justice.
So did you bring it up because of the potential monetary effect or time delay effect?
It's more the monetary
Okay.
effect, less the time delay. I mean, we
Okay.
certainly can incorporate it. We just don't know what it's going to be.
It could be a lot more meetings.
It could
be a lot
be,
more. Yeah.
we just don't know what's
Answering
gonna
questions
happen, and
things. Yeah.
we certainly have like, okay, well, or we don't know if they're gonna want us to include, are we gonna mail something to everyone in the town? Are we gonna mail just to that community? Are they going to give us a space at one of their schools or something to present, or are they gonna say, no, you go find someplace and you rent something? We have no idea, because it's not their town, so they don't, they may, not sure what they're gonna do.
This are they?
Town of Ashland.
They're not a state agency.
Nope.
There's no federal thing. We're
Nope.
going through the local conservation commission. We're going through MEPA, right? We're gonna go through the planning board. Why are we screwing around with these people?
MEPA,
No, MEPA is
pulls them in
state.
MEPA required.
MEPA's pulling them in because they're this EJ community.
That makes it simple.
within the radius of our project.
1 mile radius of them.
Okay.
Was this group not present when Ashland just built their new school?
It's on the fringe of the town, like near the train station. Like, I don't have
So-
the exact map, but it's closer to the train station, which is at the edge of your town. So at the time that we built the Ashland School, it was not in that radius of that school. And
Did you have more than?
we didn't trigger
Is
MEPA.
it too late to
Yeah,
leave the school?
what happened to us is
We
there's a certain
triggered
number of triggers that push you into this process. And we, because of that, remember a while ago, we talked about the acreage of
Yep.
hardscape that we're putting in. That's our trigger.
Yeah.
Once we hit that trigger, this one now exists in there, and now it's 2, and that's why we need to do this environment. I think we need to go further,
Okay.
because we have these 2 things. And one of the strategies that the permitting experts coming up with is saying, well, maybe we can do a lesser thing because we're only really 1, and have a conversation with MEPA about
Yeah.
potentially a shortened version because of the EJ community, and not a full-blown
Yeah.
process for the whole thing, because it's not like we have 2 bona fide triggers. We only have this one that's outside your community and this other one that's real.
Yeah.
But it's just a notification to them, like they don't.
No,
make up-
you have to actually engage them and show that you have made an effort to present the project and hear their concerns and have a public, they say a public process.
Right,
So
which-
similar to what we've done here, they're not as many, right? They're not expecting us to go 12 times, but our consultant says at least once we should anticipate having some kind of presence and doing a presentation and answering questions and making ourselves available to that community.
Right, so in other communities, if it was a closer abutter, it would be more directly impacted. There may be some mitigation offsets because they then have a voice, right? Because they're a direct impact. They're not a direct impact right here because they're across the town line.
As we sort of, I know that's a little bit far off, but as we approach that, we should think about engaging the Sustainable Green Committee here in Hopkinton, because obviously they did a lot of work with us around the design of the school. They might know more about the EJC and might be just worth bringing them along. I'm sure they'd be willing to help.
Good job.
Okay.
So, the point of all that is the permitting is the one thing we don't control, right? The rest of the contracts, this committee controls, and we can control as consultants and manage the process, but that's the one wild card, in the whole thing.
And as that process moves forward, we'll obviously review the factors and triggers and provide more comprehensive information about how we're approaching that permitting process.
Okay. So do we have any questions on these contract, let's split them out. Let's start with the Vertex OPM contract amendment. Are there any questions regarding that? Okay. Hearing none, I would seek a motion to approve the OPM contract amendment from design through closeout with Vertex. Is that good?
Say amendment 1 and then the value. Or
Oh, now I gotta pull the thing back up.
It's amendment number 1 and the value is $4,087,130.
Amendment number 1 for the value to that 4 million. Oh, you got $4,87,130.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, motion by Mike, second by Bill. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Abstaining? Nope. So that contract amendment is approved. And then we also,
There's one other thing in Dan's that I didn't mention. So in addition to his amendment for the full design through closeout, we also included some reimbursable services for things that may come up along the way. And then if you recall, back in the summertime, we were going to do our geothermal test well, but then we had to table it, and there was ground frozen questions, and we decided to go down 600 feet instead of 500 feet, but we also spent the feasibility money, so we tabled it. So there's a $12,650 in here to go down the additional 100 feet and the extra day on site for that drilling rig to span that day. And so that's also baked in here. And so there may be some adjustments to the finances with the MSBA because it now spans the original appropriation and this appropriation, and it's probably cleanest just to void it on the original appropriation and apply it to this one, the entire geothermal test well. There's more than enough money set aside in the geotechnical line item to cover the total value of the geothermal well, but I just wanted you to be aware of that because it gets more complicated if I span 2 different accounting systems.
Do we need a vote to make that decision?
No, I just want them to be aware of it.
Are there cost efficiencies? I understand this, the 166,000 is a one-time drill a test. Once they're here, is it going to cost 66 per 600 feet?
No, it's about 32,000
Yeah,
per
okay.
100 feet. So this includes a good chunk of that, like 10,000 of it is the engineer's time to witness it all, draft the report, and do his evaluation. It's not just the driller's time.
Yeah, the 12,650, which is the same number that we had tabled,
Yeah.
like it's the same proposal, we just incorporated it into the agreement. It covers all of the engineering and will just cover that one activity. So the charge here is just the added driller cost for the activity.
okay. Any other questions on the Perkins amendment? Okay, then I would seek a motion to approve amendment number 6 with Perkins Eastman in the amount of $11,058,663. That's the amendment amount.
Correct.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Bill, second by Mike. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? Nope. Okay, then it is unanimous, 5-0. And we,
Just have a question on the schedule for the test loop. What's the schedule for Skillings to do that work?
You were gonna, depends on Mother Nature. at this point.
it depends on the ground.
The answer is we were waiting for the ground to freeze up enough where he's not going to sink in the mud. And so our thought is that in January, mid-January, that it would be good there. But we also want to not do it when it's full of snow because then we're going to have to pay to plow it. So, it's that. We're going to try and get a time, and then we may have to reschedule it again if we don't hit the right spot. Some winters have been very dry and cold, and that's perfect for what we're trying to do. If we get a lot of precipitation, it just becomes another cost or another challenge.
Yep.
Are they still months out, or are they more flexible at this stage?
They didn't give me an indication that they were months out, but they were eager to understand what our plan was, which was good timing because we're kind of ready to do it. And then knowing where we're talking about, they wanted to get a feel for like, when can we get out there and take a look at this condition, and when's the right weather going to happen where we're not going to have a problem. So I'm urging them to get there now, or send the drill rig guy there now to look at this so he understands it, rather than show up the day and decide he doesn't want to drive his rig in there no matter what. So that's the.
Right, when he comes out, we may have to flatten a few spots out if he thinks he's gonna bottom out with the rig, so. And, we have a little bit of money between the reimbursables. If we gotta, send a guy out there to kind of flatten some of that, we can handle that.
Thanks.
You mentioned the design would be at around 50% in spring, so is there a drop dead date by which time you need to get the testing done?
Sooner the better.
Sooner.
Yeah, I mean, it helps reduce the number of wells. Like right now, if you recall, we had the more conservative assumption, but if we can drop a couple of wells earlier than later, that allows us to, manage the budget better when we get to that milestone and understand our risks ahead.
And tonight's vote is the trigger that starts us really engaging with them to move forward and set a date.
Will you guys let Tim know when this is, I assume he'll have to know.
Yeah.
Yes.
We're not
You
gonna-
let me know.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, we won't mobilize
I
contractors.
have all kinds of time now.
Yeah.
I'm retired
I
today.
heard that.
You did?
Today?
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
It's my fifth retirement, so
You think this one's gonna stick?
I got a job for you, Mike.
it's my second one. Good,
Okay.
sounds great.
So that's the last item on our agenda, but what about next? When should this group think about getting together next?
In January, we don't need a meeting the month of December.
Okay.
What Dan's gonna do is now mobilize all his team,
Yeah.
get them all the plans again, start working. We're gonna engage the users and try and do simple things like room numbering, as Mike can attest, that's one of those things you argue about, but we wanna get that early, so we've got work to do with the users, but they're not design decisions, they're more, rudimentary conversations, so that'll occur this month in January, but, maybe mid-January we'll get together again.
Yeah, I was going to say 10 or 17.
Yeah.
If we're
Need a
keeping
vote on
Wednesdays.
the Project scope and budget agreement.
That's a good question. It's not in their packet. Chris's question is,
So
you need to take a vote.
the MSBA, as part of the agreement with the town, issues a project scope and budget agreement. We didn't include it in your packet tonight, but what it essentially outlines is the deal. I think the metaphor that Jeff uses is that it's sort of the
Purchase and sale.
purchase and sale agreement, and then the project funding agreement becomes the sort of closing. And so it sets the budget, and so the next budget that you see once we incorporate the MSBA agreement will include the budget that was set and voted on as part of the appropriation by the town.
Yeah.
And that'll mirror that project scope and budget agreement, but the town has to sign off on that, so it needs to go through town council and make sure that they're comfortable with it, which is just a formality largely. And then at some point, I think the town would need to vote, or the ESBC would need to vote on it to move it forward. So it was not in tonight's packet.
Do we think it's more urgent than January?
There's a clock, I think it's 60 days.
60 days from the,
But we need to get town council to look at it you're
Yeah.
not gonna change anything, but you should, everybody's gotta check the box, so, you can have town council look at it, but
60 days from what?
when they issued it, which was,
Oh, okay, when they issued it.
I think it was a week, I think it was just before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, it was.
I gotta go back and find that.
So why don't
Yeah,
we?
she issued it on the 7th, the day before the town
Yeah, so
election.
it sounds like we would
meeting.
need to, if we need to vote that, it sounds like we need to get together at least for a brief meeting
Yeah, we might need another meeting this month.
in December.
Yeah, 60 days.
Okay, so
So, yeah, you'd need it, to have voted it and signed it by the beginning of January, January 7th.
what,
So why don't we do this? I mean, you can schedule a quick meeting to review it, and you're not gonna.
Right. We
Can answer any
just, it's a
questions.
quorum, we need a meeting where we can get a quorum.
Yeah, and
basically.
it could just be a virtual, because there's no exhibits, or, I mean, the document is the document. And in the meantime, if you want to authorize us to follow up with the town manager and town council, we'll get that ball rolling now
Okay.
and get them to sign off on it, because one of the things is a legal certification that the town has the authority to sign this on their behalf. And then it's got to circulate to 4 signatures, one being John, one being Carol, and then selectmen, and I think there's how many other now?
I can only think of 3.
No, it's 4. School
Chair of the
committee
school
chair.
committee.
Yeah, so it'd be the CEO of the town should be Norman, and then John, Carol, and then the chair of the school committee, the 4 signatures. And then the reimbursement rate has 3 signatures, so it's just less John.
I think by the way, in the past, we've done CEO of the town is.
Oh,
select chair.
selectmen? Yeah,
Select board
yeah,
chair.
that's right.
Yeah.
Select chair.
Okay, so,
All right, so why don't I circulate this, and then it also needs to go to the school committee, so we'll get that on their agenda as well.
and then we can put out a virtual meeting in December, just to quickly, I mean, there's no reason to gather everybody here if we really just have to come in and authorize the signing of that.
Sounds
So,
good.
Okay.
Okay, but, and then January, for next meeting, you said like 10th or 17th, was that, did I hear that?
Yeah, why don't we do the 17th, unless you think
That's
the
fine.
yeah.
No, I-
17th, because then we'll make sure we get the invoice packet cycle and all the rest of that in there.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Unless,
Yeah, and if we're after December 12th, we'll also be able to vote on invoices for November.
Oh, if we do the virtual meeting after December 12th, yep, that works.
And on the 17th, can we make that remote option as well?
Sure.
I can't do the 17th, can you do the 17th?
Tuesday.
No, 17th is a Wednesday. Oh, yeah, we're doing
a
Tuesdays,
Wednesday.
right?
It's, I said it was, I just put it on the Wednesday.
No, you put it on, but our usual day was
Tuesday's
We
Tuesdays.
usually do.
Yeah,
Our
so I could do the
usually
16th.
16, it's fine.
16th is the day after MLK Day. Does that
Should
work?
we give consideration to move, I know we didn't do Wednesdays because, although your busy season's picking up again, isn't it?
Well, I'm not around in January,
Okay.
but the appropriation doesn't kick in till about the 20th of February.
Okay, I was just thinking about the thing about Tuesdays is it always conflicts with select board.
Right, and I think we always used Thursdays,
Okay.
I think.
But we don't want to conflict with.
No, you're Thursday.
You're
No,
Thursday.
Thursday's a school.
Yeah,
committee,
school.
I'll check.
I was like, you don't want to conflict with them.
So Tuesdays generally work for this group.
All right, let's go with the 16th then for consistency.
All right, so 16th works.
And if we want to revisit, because of the select board clash, we can do that apart from this. Okay? So
And December will be to be determined.
December's TBD, yep. Okay,
Yeah, it was Wednesdays last spring that we met, so.
the appropriation?
appropriation,
Yeah.
yeah.
The problem is there's too many committees who run on days
Well,
of the
that's,
week.
yeah. Everybody wants an all-inclusive committee, but that means it all conflicts with everybody.
Okay, well, if there's nothing else, then I would seek a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
We need a
Second.
motion
What do we need?
authorizing us to head to town council.
Do we need a,
No.
I don't think we
You
need a
just-
motion for that,
no,
yeah. Just,
They need to look at it anyway, so we don't, I'm just.
right, no, I
we'll
mean,
just-
yes, we're aware
We've
that you're,
informed
we're
you that
aware
we're
that
gonna
you're
take-
doing it. The
Yeah.
committee's aware that you're doing it, so I think we're covered there. So we have a motion by Mike, a second by Jack Root to adjourn the meeting. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Of course
Glad
not.
got it.
We are adjourned at 6:36 PM. Thank you to HCAM. Thank you again to everyone who came out to vote at both special town meeting and the special town election. We are excited to get moving on this project. Our next meeting will be on our next meeting will be in December. Our next meeting here will be on January 16th. Have a good night.